Big, luxurious and rapid electric cars are great, but not everyone has the need or the budget for EVs like that. For lots of people, the electric cars they're after are at the other end of the scale, as more affordable urban runarounds. So if that's what you're after, what are your best options? Well, the first thing to point out is that on the whole, electric cars can still seem expensive next to fuel-powered alternatives. However, even at the low end of the EV size and price range, there's plenty of excellent options as long as you've got the budget for it. And don't forget, in the UK, if your EV has a list price of less than £32,000, then it's eligible for a £1,500 discount with the plug-in car grant. And all the prices we show here include that discount where applicable. So these are the top 10 best small electric cars that you can buy right now. Before we start, if you want to see our in-depth reviews on these EVs and every new car going on sale, subscribe to our channel. And for a great saving on your next new car, click on the link to go to whatcar.com. The Honda E is a properly eye-catching EV on the outside, and its widescreen interior is remarkably upmarket for such a small car. It's also great to drive, and it comes with loads of standard equipment, so why is it only 10th in our list? Well, it's a tiny car with a tiny boot and a tiny battery. In real-world driving conditions, you can expect it to cover less than 100 miles on a full charge. As with all electric cars, if you can easily charge it at home and every single journey you do only covers a short distance, then the limited range may not be a problem. But for anyone hoping for some versatility with their EV use, at almost £35,000, there are other alternatives worth considering before the Honda. One of which is the Hyundai Ioniq Electric. It's relatively common now, but when the Ioniq was originally launched, it was the first car you could buy as a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, or as a full EV. And that wasn't just a headline-grabbing gimmick. Each version of the car was pretty good. The electric version is decent inside with a respectable range and fine performance for this kind of car. On the downside, it has a fairly unsettled ride and limited rear headroom. The Renault Zoe was a great small EV pioneer. Some changes to its lineup recently has reduced the choice if you do want to buy a new one now though. So if you're after a Zoe, you can only get it in R135 GT Line Plus spec. This gets you lots of equipment, a nice interior, a good range and decent performance. It's still a great choice, but in this spec, and because the government grant has been drastically reduced over the years, the Zoe isn't the bargain it once was. As a side note, you might see this one-spec Zoe called the EV50 Rapid Charge, but before you go thinking this is some remarkably quick charging EV, the maximum charging speed it can accept is 50 kilowatts. There are some EVs with maximum charging speeds that are slower than that, like the Honda E, but there aren't many. Every new electric car should be able to accept a charge of at least 50 kilowatts, which in the Zoe gets you a 0 to 80% charge in around 1 hour. But many more in this list accept faster charging speeds. So it's rapid charge by name, not necessarily by nature. Now, Mini is a brand that has traditionally been a more expensive option compared to its alternative fuel-powered rivals. But that's different in the electric car world. The Mini Electric is actually one of the cheapest EVs in this list. Not only is it surprisingly well priced, but it's also pretty quick and has a great interior, and many will just be drawn to this car because of the Mini brand itself. But, like the Honda E, the thing that limits the appeal of this Mini is its meagre range. From a full charge, you'd be doing well to get 100 miles out of the battery. The ride is also quite firm, and it's fairly tight on rear seat space and boot space. For a long time, the first generation Nissan Leaf was the best-selling electric car in the world. But since then, the EV market has become swamped with new competition. Even against a whole host of new rivals, this second generation Leaf stacks up fairly well in its class. It gets lots of kit as standard, it has a big boot, and it's quite comfortable on the road. There is a more powerful and more expensive 62 kWh version of the Leaf, but we'd push you towards the standard car with the 39 kWh battery, as it represents much better value. For decades now, the Vauxhall Corsa has sold in huge numbers in the UK, and the British brand will be hoping the first fully electric version of the car can go on to achieve similar levels of success. It stands a good chance of doing so, with a competitive price, good performance, and a respectable range. If you like everything about the fuel-powered Corsa, then you'll definitely get on with this electric version. It's quite common in the electric car world for manufacturers to pool their resources and share parts for different electric cars. The Corsa E and Peugeot E208 is one example of this. So the cars are fundamentally very similar underneath. They share the same battery, the same motors, but in the areas where they differ, the E208 is the better overall package. It's comfier and it has a nicer interior, so it might be a bit more money, but it's ultimately worth it. Lots of small electric cars are still actually quite big, so if you really are after a car that's simple to drive around and park in a busy city, then the Fiat 500 is an excellent choice. There are two different battery sizes you can choose from, but while the 24 kWh version has an incredibly low price, it doesn't have a very good range at all. We think it's definitely worth going for the 42 kWh version because you'll be able to travel much further on a full charge. It's an EV that is good to drive, and sure, it doesn't have lots of room for loads of people inside or a big boot, but it's got a nicely finished interior and it's one of the cheapest new electric cars out there. There's also a convertible version. The VW ID.3 is a great electric all-rounder, which at its launch was hailed as the VW Golf of the electric car era. It's spacious inside, good to drive, with a great range and decent performance. It's on the pricier side of the small electric car class, but you get a lot for your money. But now, the best small electric car you can buy is the Cupra Born. Like the Corsa E and Peugeot E208, the ID.3 and the Born are very similar to one another underneath. So that means the Born has all the strengths which the VW offers, but crucially, it's a little bit better in a few areas to make it a slightly better car overall. The main difference is the fact the Born has a better infotainment system, which is a real weakness in the ID.3. It also has a slightly nicer interior thanks to a more consistent quality of the materials used. It is a truly fantastic EV, and if you want to find out more about what makes it so good, click on the link to watch our full review and comparison with the ID.3. Not all small electric cars are good though. We've recently seen the new Smart #1, and let's hope that electric car is significantly better than Smart's previous ventures into the EV world. Because the Smart 4.4 EQ and 4.2 EQ are the small electric cars to avoid. They may seem cheap, but they're very bad to drive, have terrible electric ranges, and are very cramped inside. If you really do need a tiny electric car for the city, the Fiat 500 is a much better option. So those are the best and worst small electric cars that you can buy. But what do you think is best? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to see all of our reviews of every new EV, and go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car.